Coming to you from the Oddball Podcast Studios in New York City. My name is Vin Forte, and you're listening to Oddball with Vin Forte. Go follow the show over on YouTube, youtube.com/@Oddball Podcast. If you don't want to watch the show, you can go listen wherever you get your podcast from: Apple, Spotify, Stitcher. No, don't use Stitcher. They went bankrupt last summer, so they don't exist anymore. But you know where to get your podcast from, because you're listening to one right now. But again, YouTube is the big one. It was like pushing that. So youtube.com/@Oddball Podcast if you're not already subscribed. Over on social media, on Instagram, first and foremost, @Oddball_pod. And then over on Twitter/X @Oddball Podcast. So if all that out of the way, thank you for joining me. Normally I have a guest. Every couple of weeks I go solo. This is a solo week. Voice is a little out of it, so I apologize if there's a little creakiness to my voice. I am getting over being very sick earlier this week, so this episode might keep this episode a little short. But we do have some big topics to talk about, so we're just going to jump right into it with one of the big ones, which is Caitlin Clark. Iowa's Caitlin Clark, a phenomenal, presence in the women's game today. Arguably, people like her, Angel Reese is right up there, but Caitlin Clark is basically the player of the moment for college sports right now, just in general. Not even just, you go through the gamut of basketball, football, whatever it is. You name it, she's above it all right now. She is the phenom, and she is declared for the WNBA. And a lot of people are having an argument that, she should stay the extra year that she has been granted because of COVID. A lot of people are getting the 5th-year extension in NCAA sports. And a lot of people are making the argument that she's missing out on a lot of NIL money to the tune of $750,000 in NIL money by opting to go right to the WNBA. Now, I don't get this at all. The hate that is. I don't quite understand it. Because, again, this is her life. She can do what she wants to do. I'm sure she's going to make, believe me, she will make money anywhere she goes. She could be going to a EuroLeague, she'll make money she's going to make money because she is Caitlin Clark, and people want to pay to see Caitlin Clark right now. So whether she stays in college an extra year, whether she goes to the WNBA, which she is going to do now, she will make her mark, and she will make her money. Now, in terms of her missing out on money, I think this is a weird argument, because people are saying that, when she gets to the WNBA, the spotlight's going to dim a little bit, because it's sort of like she's big in college right now, but the WNBA is not as big as the college game, which I don't necessarily buy that. I think the WNBA is, there've definitely been cool periods in the WNBA where they've, been more on ice than other periods, but this is not one of those. They are genuinely having a moment right now. And it starts at the college level for sure, because you have all these stars in the college game that are bringing eyes to the women's game in college. So, even this year, everyone's talking about the women's game. Nobody's really talking about the men's game. like even other men who, are very staunchly I never watched the women's game. Even those guys are I don't really care about, outside of the betting. If you're betting on the men's game, whole different story. Those people are always going to be invested in the betting aspect. But, when the hardcore, I don't watch women's sports people are like, hey, listen, I'm not watching the men's game this year. The women's game is having a moment. And I think in terms of, because a couple angles here. The one is her going to the WNBA in general. And people saying that, well, can she really make a difference? I think she can make a difference, but I don't think it should all be on her shoulders because, again, there's going to be people like her, like Juju just had a record game the other night for USC, like people like Angel Reese who are coming up, from LSU. Like these are named people now who've made names for themselves with these NIL deals now. So when they get into the WNBA, like they're only going to bring more eyes with them. And I've talked and others have talked about this past year being kind of a watershed moment for the WNBA because, you've had big superstar teams that people want to see, like the Liberty with Breanna Stewart, like the Las Vegas Aces, with Kelsey Plum and all of them. They have a stacked team. Their team is so stacked. Candace Parker's on the team, and half the people who just casually watch the WNBA and know kind of what's going on were like, "What? Candace Parker's on the Aces now?" Like, that's how stacked that team is. So, like, Asia Wilson, give her flowers. Like she deserved a lot of credit last season for bringing a lot of eyes to the product, just like Caitlin Clark, wherever she's going to end up in the WNBA, is going to bring eyes wherever she goes. And as more people of name recognition, of name value, enter the league, you're going to see people follow. Now, again, people like to move the goalposts. So they go, oh, well, if Caitlin Clark isn't the next Michael Jordan or Larry Bird or Magic Johnson, like if they don't come in and completely revolutionize the league, it's just going to be a fail and we got to counter out of it. It's like, why? Why does everything have to always be on one person? Why does everyone have this weird savior complex? Complex. Again, getting over being sick. Can't help it. But why does everyone have this complex where it's got to be on her shoulders? Yeah, a little of it's going to be on her shoulders for sure because she's the one, she's the actual person coming into the league. So, there's going to be expectations of that. But, look at the expectations with someone like Wembanyama over in the NBA. Is he affecting winning when it comes to the San Antonio Spurs right now? Well, you could make the argument that he is, on certain nights. But for the most part, you could also make an argument that there's bigger issues at play with that entire team, that they don't pass out to him as much, that they're not necessarily using him correctly, that Popovich is, I'm not going to say wasting him because he's a generational talent, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes that's more than just, hey, we've got this generational talent and he's not living up to the expectation because he's going to be rookie of the year. Like there's no doubt about it. Like he's going to be the guy. But you could, some people are trying to say that he doesn't affect winning. And again, I think that's unfair. To put it all on Wembanyama just because the Spurs, are kind of hot garbage, right? Like they have a better record last year than they have this year with Wembanyama. So would you say that, Wembanyama had all these expectations and he's not living up to them? Because I bet there's going to be people who say that about Caitlin Clark if the same thing happens with her, where, it's the old double standard, where I think if she comes in and doesn't affect winning on whatever team she goes to right away, they're going to dogpile on her. And, again, it's something to just keep in the back of your mind and look out for because, people aren't giving grief to Wemby. Most people aren't. And I'm just getting sort of out in front of it where it's like, we need to give her a little grace as well. Like, don't put it all on her shoulders. She can only do what she can do, And that's a bigger thing that we're going to get to in a little bit. When we talk about LeBron James hitting 40,000 points, some people like to say, oh, well, he's ruining for as much as his individual greatness is still, shining, that he doesn't affect winning right now. What do you mean he doesn't affect? He's part of a team. The man can only do so much. I get it. Like he's not going to put the whole team on his back anymore. But, can anyone in today's modern game? Like it's a whole bigger conversation. But going back to Caitlin Clark and sort of swinging the door all the way back around, I think it's a good thing that she's going to the WNBA. And the argument that I've made that I wish other people would make is that Caitlin Clark, here's what I don't get. Caitlin Clark is getting guff from certain people for going right to the WNBA. When these are mostly all the same people who complain that the problem with the men's college game is that they don't stay 4 years and they're one and dones and they don't get the experience of being on a college team for more than just a year. And she did her 4 years. Like her coming back is basically her 5th year because of the COVID year. So, she did her 4 years. She did her full stint in a college NCAA program. So there should be no issue whatsoever with her going into the WNBA right now. And again, that's her choice to make. If she's going to miss out on a lot of NIL money, I think she's weighed those options. I think she knows what she's losing or gaining by going to the WNBA. I think she has people in her camp that she talks to about this. So I think Caitlin Clark is going to be just fine. And we should all kind of just back off for a little bit and just celebrate the greatness. Sometimes we can't step back and just go, this person's great right now. Let's watch them be great. And let's worry about the off-season stuff when the off-season comes around. But what we know right now is that she's great right now. She said she's going to go to the WNBA. She's probably going to be great in the WNBA. So we're going to wait and see on that one. But we're going to stick to the NCAA right now because I want to get to another big topic during the Duke-Wake Forest game this past week, when Wake Forest stormed the court because they got a big upset against Duke. And listen, is it great that someone, potentially got injured or could have gotten injured by people storming the court? No, of course not. You don't want anyone to get injured. But I think people are I think people are totally throwing the baby out with the bathwater on this one. Because people are like, well, this is going to keep happening, and then someone's really going to get injured, and then what do you do then? It's like, first off, we got to stop storming the court for stuff that's not like a complete upset. Wake Forest was favored by 2, and they won. So, yeah, I get it. It was Duke. You want to see Duke go down. I'm with you. I'm with you on this one. I would want Wake Forest to win just as much as anyone over Duke. But I don't know if it's worthy, if it's storm the court worthy when you're already favored to win. But that aside, they did storm the court. And, look, I get it. Again, like, you don't want people to get injured. But people have been storming the court for, years and years and years and years. Like, since college sports have been a thing, people have stormed the court. In football, it's not as big a deal because the court is a stadium and it's huge. And it's literally the size of a football field. But when you get to, NCAA basketball games, that's a little different. That's a little bit of a different canard going on there because there's less real estate to run around. If you're watching on YouTube, you see a photo up there from the Wake Forest Duke game where it looks pretty cramped. I would not want to be in the middle. As someone who is kind of an introvert, I would not want to be in the middle of that crowd. No, I'm thinking about it right now, and I'm just like, I would run for the hills. I gotta be honest with you. But again, I get it. People are gonna storm the court, and I think you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater on this one. It's a college tradition. Traditionally, nobody gets hurt doing it. To say that, oh, people could get hurt or that someone's going to get their arm wrapped or people are going to get run over by other people. Get better security. I think I don't think it goes much farther past needing to protect the players. I think you let them storm the court. If there is an issue that arises, I think you find the school or you find the team and just let the students know, hey, we've got cameras. We see what clearly see what you're doing. And if you do something in the course of storming the court that we think is, uncouth or could hurt someone, we're going to let the other school, or if it's our school, we're going to take action. And I think you just put guidelines in place that deter people from really getting a little too raucous. But, even above that, I think you just have better protocol for the teams. Like if the game is about to end, you bring the security out and you take the teams away. You sort of shepherd them off into their corners and you have security make a path for them to get out of there. Or, have security surround them. I'm not saying it needs to, I'm making it sound more serious than it needs to be. Like, oh, security's got to surround them and, get them out of the building. This is not the Malice at the Palace. Like, we're not going that far. But, beef up the security a little bit. At the end of the game, have all the security, centralized in the building towards the court. You see what they do in the NBA. There's some court storming, every once in a while. But by and large, the security is there to cut that stuff off before it gets a little too rowdy. And I think you just do the same thing in college. Now, again, you're dealing with college students, so you could make the argument that it's a little more uncontrollable. But I think you investigate. You find a way to do it. I don't see why not. Well, why can't you? Instead of having the players, you always see when they storm the court, the players still just in the middle of the court. Why are the players still just hanging around the middle of the court? Get them off to the side at least. You don't need to have them in the center. You've got enough time, especially if who's going to win and lose in the last minute. Sometimes there's you're storming the court because it's a last minute shot that clinches it, but I bet most times, you kind of know who's going to win in the last few seconds. Be prepared. It's the old saying. You just be prepared. People are going to storm the court. It's like I said, it's a college tradition. People want to storm the court. Could you just do something full stop where it's like, hey, make an announcement before the game if you storm the court? Again, we've got cameras. We know who's out there. Like you're getting expelled or you're getting suspended. Something like some big penalty is going to come down if we catch you storming the court. Yeah, you could. But again, I don't know if that. I mean, some people are saying that would end it right there. Like it would stop people. I don't know if it would stop people. There's a lot of people that don't go to these schools that go to these games. And there's also a lot of people that just wouldn't care, or they just pull their hood up, or put a mask, cover their face. Like I don't know. I don't know if it would stop it. But I think, again, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater on this one. I think you just get better security. Like if this incident hadn't happened, if we hadn't had the incident with the women's game a couple weeks ago, would we be even talking about this? Probably not. So, is this going to be a case where a few bad apples ruin what's been a college tradition? Now, look, you could say some traditions need to be put to bed. Okay. If you're on that side of the fence, there's nothing I can say to really convince you otherwise. But, I'm on this side of the fence. I think it's a fun tradition. If you're truly an upset and you do one of these giant killing games, if you get one of these giant killing wins in a tournament, It's a fun moment to storm the court. Again, like, you don't want to hurt anyone, you don't want to trample over people, but that's why we have security. That's why you have security there to get people the hell out, to protect, the other team, your team, to protect people on the court. It shouldn't be that hard. So we'll see, what side of the wind this blows, because I don't know what the outcome is going to be. Like, I could totally see it going either way, where people either, we've had it's going to be one of those things where we had the conversation this week. So now is the conversation going to just go away and people are just going to be like, we overreacted. Let's just, we'll do more security, let people storm the court. Or is it going to be one of those things where you're going to see school by school people doing what I just said a couple minutes ago, where they're going to start doing announcements going, hey, if you storm the court, we're going to catch you. We've got cameras, and if we were able to identify you, you're done. You're expelled. So we shall see. But, I mentioned LeBron James. And as of this recording, it looks like he's about to hit in this game with Denver that they've got going on 40,000 points, which he's already the all-time leading scorer. So 40,000, it's a nice round number. It's a nice benchmark to be like, hey, he's the only person to have hit 40,000 points. So it's great for him. That, certainly a great feather in his cap. But again, he's already the all-time leading scorer. So now he's just adding on to that. But what I really want to talk about is every time this happens, where LeBron James hits some sort of individual milestone, everyone and their grandmother has to have a conversation about, does this move the needle for him in the GOAT conversation? And I'm here to tell you, I'm kind of sick of it. And I'm here to tell you, for all time, outside of him winning more championships, and even then, you could have an argument that it's not going to move the needle for people. I'm sorry to tell you the truth. People are dug in on this. There is literally nothing outside of possibly winning more championships that LeBron James could do to move the needle in the GOAT conversation for people who already have Michael Jordan above him. There's just not. Sorry to, tell everybody the facts, but this is what it is. Like, so people need to stop having these, frankly, futile conversations about, well, LeBron hit 40,000 points, so does this finally put him above MJ? Like, no. To the MJ people, nothing is going to put him above Michael Jordan. That is just not happening. So when he got the scoring record from Kareem, that was probably the last point where people could go, does this move the needle for you? That he's now the all-time point. So now to go above that and be like, well, now he's got 40,000, but does that do anything for you? Like, he could hit 100,000 points. It's not going to move the needle for the Jordan people. I'm sorry. Like, and again, it's not an insult to be like, this guy's the second best player ever. And you could say he's again, like, I don't even necessarily subscribe to that, because if you've been listening to this pod for a while, I subscribe to the tier system where you've got the people who could be a GOAT, like the people who are in the GOAT conversation for different reasons, where you've got Bill Russell because of the titles, you've got Jordan because of the overall accomplishment. And, you look at the resume, and for his prime, it's a pristine resume. You've got LeBron's in there now because of the individual statistics, the surpassed expectations, coming right out of high school and now being as good for as long as he's been, I think adds to that legacy for him specifically. And then you've got Kareem in there as well, who had an amazing career, overall from, we've never seen anyone go like from high school to college to the NBA who's had such a path of excellence all the way up the ladder. So those guys are in the GOAT conversation for different reasons. But in terms of, is it MJ or is it LeBron? This does nothing for anyone. Like having the conversation about does 40,000 points, after he's already won the scoring title, the scoring record, does that move the needle for you? No, it's not going to move the needle for anyone because the LeBron people are still going to have him number one, and they're going to just say, well, this is more, this is more whipped cream, this is more cherry on top of the sundae. And the MJ people are going to go, well, it's not a championship. So we're always going to be at this stalemate. Again, at this point, he would have to somehow keep his longevity going into his 40s and win another at least 2 championships, which I don't think he's going to do. I think he could win one. I think you could reasonably say that, based on the Lakers, having this reputation now of sort of getting their stuff together, late into a season and making these runs. Like they were in the Western Conference Finals last year, so you can't completely count them out, even though they're kind of in the middle of the pack in the Western Conference right now. You can't, this is where they were last year, like then they made that big run late in the season, took their opportunity and got to the Western Conference. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility. But 40,000 points ain't gonna move the needle. I'm sorry. That's just not gonna happen for the Jordan people and frankly the LeBron people. I think for most of them it's not gonna move it as well because he's already, what stats hasn't he compiled? And again, that's not a dirty word. People will hear stat compiler. I forget what I was listening to earlier, but they're making this argument as well. So I'm not the first to do it, but where people talk about compiling stats as if it's a bad thing. It's like, no, if you're a guy who compiles stats, like you affect winning, you're getting points, like any team would take that guy any day of the week. So good for LeBron. It's a nice round number that you can hang your hat on, but does it move the needle for the MJ people? No, absolutely not. And we've got to stop having this discussion where every little individual accomplishment that LeBron has, does it move the needle? Does this do anything? For the Jordan fan, does this do anything for you? No, it doesn't do anything for them. It's never going to do anything for them. And guess what? I'm one of those people where I agree it shouldn't do anything for them because LeBron's a completely different type of player than Jordan was. Like this adds to LeBron's specific type of legacy for his, GOAT argument. He's in the camp. He's in the GOAT camp. He's up at the top of the mountain. But when you put his resume up against Jordan's, it's kind of a different thing. He's got look, LeBron's got the longevity, and that's going to count for something long after he's done playing because it's something we're going to look back at. And yes, we are going to, judge that as a positive for him. I think more so than some people do now. But again, like that's for further down the road. So, again, just a little bugaboo this week. Like we gotta stop having this conversation. Like, we always come back to every week. LeBron's at a point now where he's been in the league so long, he's gonna keep breaking individual records. The longer he goes on. So for every once a month, we got to stop having this conversation about does X record that he broke move the needle for the Jordan people. It doesn't. It's never going to. We got to stop it. I'm going to stop this topic right now. We've been going on a little too long on it. But, like I said, well, if you're on YouTube, look at this guy. Look at this. Look at this big guy. Shaquille O'Neal. We're going to end today with a nice cool down segment. Shaquille O'Neal, this is according to the Takeout, is stepping down from the board of Papa John's after joining in 2019. So Shaq will be stepping down from the board of Papa John's. He will still be a brand ambassador. So we may still yet see the return of the Shaq-a-Roni pizza, but just hearing him step, if this is the end of the Shaq partnership with Papa John's, it has been a time, and I encourage all of you to go to YouTube, look up some Shaq Papa John clips, because if you've missed out on it, it's just sort of gone under your radar the past couple of years, you've missed out on some fun. You've missed out on some fun stuff. Besides, notable things during Shaq's tenure, besides the Shaq-a-Roni pizza, which is just a gigantic pizza piled with an ungodly amount of pepperoni. He's partnered with them to do things like being able to order the Mountain Dew NBA 2K 2023 Players Pack Bundle at Papa John's, where you can unlock a bunch of digital BS for the 2K game. I love this picture as well, where he's clearly wearing a Lakers uniform, but for whatever reason, they couldn't get the license to it, so they had to cover it with him holding a basketball. But my favorite part of his tenure at Papa John's, my favorite part of Shaq's tenure at Papa John's, is when he would show up to Inside the NBA and just hawk papadillas. Whenever they would come out with a new thing like the papadillas, he'd be like, "Hey guys, I got a present for you." Be like, "Oh, you got a present? Oh, it's Christmas time, Shaq. Shaq got us a present. What do you get?" And they'd come back from break and he'd be, as you see right now on your screen, wheeling and dealing papadillas backstage at Inside the NBA as his present to people. Listen, man, he gets a lot of free stuff with his endorsements. He's a man of many brands. So why not use that to spread the wealth? So Shaq stepping down from the board of Papa John's. Hopefully this does not mean the end of him hawking papadillas and Shaq-a-Roni pizzas and all the other fun stuff. Because they really had a big turnaround. Like, let's not forget, he joined the board to basically turn their image around after the original Papa John had to be ousted for, let's just say, not cool things that he said. Let's just leave it at that. You could look that up on your own. And then, like, all the drunk pictures of him, and then he had, like, a vendetta against Papa John's where he was, like, he did that interview where he was like, "I eat 20 or 30 pizzas a month, and there's going to be a day of reckoning coming." And that day never came, because clearly Papa John's has been doing just fine without him. So I don't know what he's talking about. He's kind of a big figure on social media now. But as far as Shaq goes, listen, when one Papa John's door closes, Shaq's big chicken door opens, or a general insurance door opens. So there will be no shortage of Shaq endorsements coming forward. So don't bemoan for, don't cry for Shaq. This was not the his one big meal ticket that he's now leaving, and oh my God, what's the big fella gonna do? It's like, no, he's good. Believe me, Shaq is good. So goodbye to Shaq. We hope he still stays on as the brand ambassador for Papa John's. Man, look at that. I love that drawing of Shaq. Like, someone had to draw that. Or just the big image of Shaq eating a big slice of pizza. God, I love it. And I hope you love this episode, because this is it. We're at the end of it. So, again, like I said, kind of shorter by only a couple of minutes, I suppose. Gave you a longer episode last week, so kind of evens out. But with that said, go subscribe, like I said at the top of the episode, over on YouTube, youtube.com/@Oddball Podcast. Go subscribe to the audio version, if you like, over on Spotify, Apple, wherever else you get your podcasts. You know where to get your podcasts, because you're listening to one right now. And with that said, I'll see you back here, same time, same place next week. You've been listening to Oddball with Vin Forte. My name is Vin Forte. Go follow Instagram, oddball_pod. See you next week.